Today you join me back at the tiny house and, well, it's been a bit of a weird start to the week. Went to start the car, battery's flat, and because my car's got start-stop, that new battery cost 200 quid. Then drove over a screw, so got a flat tyre, so I had to go and get that puncture fixed on the car as well. That was 24 quid. And the icing on the cake is I spilt an entire coffee over my laptop. Now, thankfully, I don't know how, but my laptop still works, even with an entire coffee within the keyboard. So I'm just going to take that as a win, and hopefully the week gets a little bit better. However, the south of England has had crazy storms at the moment. I mean, it's the strongest winds that I've ever seen. And to be honest, I was a little bit concerned about the state of the tiny house, considering, well, it's not very watertight and it's got no windows and doors. Now, on the topic of making the tiny house watertight, I need to add Tyvek. And if you don't know what Tyvek is, it's a house wrap. And the reason why you need a house wrap is it makes the house weather resistant. It protects your house from everything from wind, rain, the moisture that's in the air, and at the same time of preventing the water entering the house, it also allows the structure to become breathable and allow the moisture vapor that's inside the house to escape at the same time. Because this is a little bit of an issue with some of these eco homes that get built where they go, oh, I need to make everything super insulated. And in order to do that, I'm going to make it basically a vacuum, a sealed box of a house. That stops the house breathing, and you need a house to breathe to allow the moisture that's in the air to escape. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I don't really follow that, how will that ever affect me? My house doesn't have any moisture in it. Well, it's crazy to me how many people don't realize that the water droplets that might be on the inside of your window is condensation. That is all the moisture that has left you from breathing, or the sink or wherever. All of that moisture is just floating around, condensing on the windows, and in bad cases, it creates mold and rot. But in this example of the tiny house, this Tyvek house wrap is going to allow that moisture to leave the house, but at the same time not let any of the moisture outside get back in. Now, the key aspect of this is to remember there's a right way and a wrong way to put house wrap on your house, and often the telltale sign is if you can't read any of the words, you've got it on the wrong way. And most companies that create house wrap, they make it super easy for you to install. For example, as you can see here, it's got the overlap level, and remember to start at the bottom of your house so the overlap is working, so that the condensing moisture falls down and doesn't tuck in behind the other layer. If I didn't explain that very well, just think of tiles on a house. If they were going the other way, the rain going down the roof would just get captured and go into the house. And also remember to just add a piece of OSB on the end, especially if you're doing this job on your own. Having a straight edge to start from, so you know that it's starting off in the right place and you don't have another set of hands holding things, it makes it so easy. I also think it's worth measuring the distance of the membrane along the entire house, so therefore the Tyvek isn't dropping as you're unrolling it, because, well, I've done it before where you step back, you look at what you've just done and you're like, how have I managed to drop 15 centimeters over the distance of this wall? It's really worth just spending that extra 2 minutes and setting out what you are about to do. Another thing, which is kind of like a precautionary measure that will save you in the future, is remember, mark out where the studs are. So as I'm adding the layers of the Tyvek, I'm going to use a straight edge and a pen or pencil, and using the screws that I've got in the OSB, mark that line onto the lower level of Tyvek. And the reason why you do this is when it comes to the cladding that I do on this tiny house, I'm going to have to add battens. Now, if you don't know what a batten is, it's just 2x1. It's just a thin piece of wood that is the first stage of usually adding any sort of wooden cladding to your house. Now, the importance of adding that line to the Tyvek is so you know where to add the screws to screw through the batten, through the Tyvek, and into the 4x2, which is the studs. Now, the importance of a batten is it basically creates the framework for adding the next layer of cladding. Now, we'll get into all of that stuff when the time comes, but another benefit of battens is it adds an air gap between the OSB, the Tyvek, and the final exterior cladding, and that creates more ventilation, preventing the moisture buildup that will happen behind the cladding system that you choose. Because honestly, the only thing that really can go wrong when building a house is structural issues and water and fire. Fire would be pretty bad. But actually no, that's not true, because fire damage is fixable. What damages the houses seriously is when the firefighters arrive and then they use all of the water to put it out, so water wins. However, that is just something that I've always heard people say. But if the firefighters didn't arrive, the house would have burnt down to the ground. So I don't really know what people are chatting. Now, some of you might have realized that I'm using like a weird stapler thing. It's like an industrial type one. And when you're adding Tyvek, I cannot recommend enough just buying one of the staplers, which is actually designed for adding house wrap to your house. It's basically a stapler that you kind of just hit like a hammer and it sends the staple out through the Tyvek and it goes straight into the OSB. It's super simple to use. Now, when I was in Screwfix, I saw there was one for sale, but it was £15. Or there was this one that was on sale for £5. So I picked the one that was on sale and wasn't very good for the job. And it really wasn't very good for the job. This thing didn't really work very well. And the whole time I was doing it, I was annoyed at myself, because if I were to go back to Screwfix and buy what I actually needed, it would have cost more than if I just bought the thing I needed in the first place. But that is how my brain works. I don't understand it. Now, if you're wondering how far should I space the staples, well, the house wrap manufacturer usually adds little markings on where to add the staples. It's super simple. And I do just want to say again, remember, if you're thinking, oh, would I be able to do that? Is that actually difficult? Chris says everything's very simple, really. Maybe he's smarter than me. Trust me, I am not. Everything is extremely simple when you break it down. And remember this key aspect. When you do stuff yourself, there is no labor cost. And the honest truth is, when it comes to DIY, when you start getting more and more experience and getting better at things, you can move projects along at such an insane rate. For example, the London project, that was 7 months. There were houses on my road that were just getting a side return extension that started before our renovation, and they were still going on after we had finished that house. You can get super quick and efficient at things. And that, to me, is super valuable. Now, some of you are thinking, Chris, why is the tiny house not finished yet? I work on the tiny house such a small amount, and I can't work in the rain because otherwise my camera will break. But yeah, I'm not working on this tiny house flat out. If I was, I truly believe you could get this thing done in 3 weeks, start to finish. And in fact, I think I'm actually going to increase the amount of time I spend working on the tiny house leading up to Christmas, because, well, it'd be awesome if I could move in by 2024, which is in a month and a bit. God, time's just flying by at the moment. That's weird. I can't actually believe it's already November. So that gives me a good month and a little bit to move in, which I think is actually doable because I've got the floor ordered. Now, the floor construction that I'm going to be doing is a bit weird. Essentially, the floor setup, the detail of it, the construction process is going to be marine grade plywood base on top of the floor joist. Now, straight away, some of you are going, oh no, Chris, what I would do is add insulation between the floor joist, and therefore you won't get any loss of head height. And if you're wondering how do you put that in the floor and so it doesn't fall through, well, you just add little screws at the base and then the insulation sits on it. Now, the reason why I am not doing that technique is because I hate cutting insulation. It is the worst thing ever. I don't want to do it. I can't be bothered with that stuff. So instead, what I'm going to do is add marine grade plywood. The marine grade means that it's basically somewhat moisture resistant, so that's a good thing to do. 20 or 40 millimeters of insulation, and then on top of that, the standard T&G chipboard flooring. T&G meaning tongue and groove. And essentially what I'm doing is creating a warm deck roof, but in the floor. So it's a warm deck floor, and you do not need to do that. Normally people would just do the plywood, the insulation on the floor, and then lay their floorboards or whatever they do straight on top of that. But because I've got quite a few different ideas of what I want to do for the flooring, the best thing for me is to have a proper solid floor, and therefore tongue and groove chipboard flooring is the one. Now, also, insulation is a very big topic. If you wonder why you should care about it, well, it saves you money. If you have a very insulated house, then it's going to cost less to heat. Now, when it comes to a house, there's quite a few crucial areas that need insulation. For example, the roof, the walls. You can get double glazed, triple glazed windows, the lot. You can really make a house super insulated. Now the floor is the least important, and therefore you do not need the thickest insulation for a floor. Now obviously you can go over the top with anything, but that is why I'm going for a very thin insulation. Also, before I forget, massive thank you to every single person who signed up to my newsletter. The first one went live on Monday evening, and I cannot believe the response. The contents for the first one was a 40 grand house that's 40 minutes from Monaco, and crazily I've already got a direct message of somebody who's flown out to view it. The second part of the newsletter was a weird way of judging the state of the world and markets, meaning financial markets, property markets. I had quite a big section on that. The third part of the newsletter was bonus UK houses of interest, and these are basically everything from dirt cheap properties that I would buy tomorrow if I had the cash, and other houses that you just do not see ever hitting the market. And I think in next week's newsletter, I'm going to go into what does reinstating an abandoned cottage actually means, what does change of use mean, all of these things. And honestly, I've got 1,000,001 more ideas and suggestions from you lot of things I can write in this newsletter. So seriously, if you haven't already, sign up to the Have Some Vision newsletter. It's on Substack. There's a link in the description. Just don't miss out, because there could be a property in every week's newsletter, which could be your property, the one that you want. And then also, if you've ever wanted more of an insight into my world, how everything works with property, be it from the small level of renovation all the way to developing, starting your own business, that is all going to be in this newsletter. So thanks for watching. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, and if you don't mind, please share this video with a friend. It will double its exposure, which would be sick. So I will see you all next Thursday.